Do you love circle skirts as much as I do? Well, today, that's what we're going to be sewing. Hi, I'm Christina, and I love to digitally apparel pattern and create unique pieces of wearable art that make me feel fantastic. And today, we're going to be creating a circle skirt. I love how swishy and flowy circle skirts are and just how full they are. If you're interested in this pattern, you can definitely find it in the link down below so that you can grab it and get it sized for you, cut out, and ready to go. There's three different ways you can print it out. We'll have it in a 8.5 by 11 printout. We'll have it in a large plotter printer, a 33 by 48 printout, or I even have the projected file. I chose to use the projected file for mine because circle skirts can get very large very quickly, and the projector was super fast and super easy. If you want to see some of the other projects I've done with the projector, make sure to check those out. So let's get sewing a circle skirt. I'm going to be using my projector to cut out my circle skirt pattern. So the first thing you always want to do is you want to make sure that you are projecting in the correct size. You can check out this video here to make sure that your projector is sized correctly. Now I'm going to bring up my pattern, and since I know I want it a full half circle, I'm going to reflect it across that grain. Across that center front line. I could also fold my fabric there so that I am cutting out one side and then it's on the fold down the center front. However, since I am pattern matching, I didn't want to do that this time. Then I bring out my rodeo cutter and I start cutting it out. I love how fast it works. However, I wasn't working fast enough because my projector or my computer went to sleep. So just make sure that if you are working with it, that you set your computer's timeout for a little bit longer than, well, what I did. Now it's time to cut the back side. I decided to do a side seam pocket instead of a center back seam. So I also wanted to pattern match. So what I did is I flipped it over to the other side, and instead of actually using the projected pattern again, I just lined up my front pattern with my back pattern. That way I knew the side seams patterns would match no problem. Then once I am happy with it all lining up, I get out my rodeo cutter again and start cutting. Now it's time to sew it all together. So I am pinning the side that I'm going to put the zipper in, because I'm going to put the zipper in first. And I'm going to do a long basting stitch for the length of the zipper up top, and then I'm going to do a back stitch and switch to a smaller stitch for the bottom. And I'm going to press the seam open, and I realized I didn't actually serge the seam before I started, and I definitely want to do that. So I'm actually going to take a quick step back, and I'm just going to serge my side seams, because I don't need to serge the hem or the top of it, because the top will be fully encased in the waistband, and the hem I want to let it hang out, and then I'm going to be cutting it even and then hemming it later. So I'm only going to serge the two side seams on both sides. Okay, on to this zipper. I loved doing lapped zippers. So for a lap zipper, you always start by lining up one edge of the teeth with the seam, or the stitch line. We're changing to a zipper stitch. We're changing to a zipper foot. And now we're going to do a stitch down that zipper through the zipper and a single layer of the seam allowance. Now the next step is we're going to flip the zipper over, and we're going to be doing a stitch line through the same seam allowance we were just doing it, but seam allowance, and then zipper tape. This is giving you the little lip to create the lap over for the zipper. You want to make sure that you are sewing very close to the zipper and to the seam. My thread just keeps wanting to come undone today. Now we're going to do the final step. So we're going to sew up the opposite side of the zipper tape. So I'm starting just below the zipper stop, and I'm stitching a few inches out, and then I'm stitching all the way up the zipper. I'm catching the zipper tape, I'm catching the fashion fabric, the seam allowance of the fashion fabric, and the zipper tape. Then all you have to do is open up your zipper, original basting, and you're ready to go. So we're going to flip back to a normal foot, and we're going to do the opposite side. So I like to put my zipper in early when I know that the garment's going to fit me, because then I'm dealing with less fabric and I'm not fighting the other half of the garment. If you don't know that the garment's going to fit you perfectly, sometimes it is better to wait to put the zipper in. There we go. Now it's time to iron that seam open. Onto the waistband. So I decided to use an iron-on interfacing for the waistband to give it a little bit more structure on this cotton. So I'm just going to iron it on and give it a really good press. Then I am going to iron it in half. That way I don't have to deal with trying to iron it in half once it's already on the skirt, since I know it's gonna go on and I'm following that top pattern matching line. Then once it is all ironed, I'm going to start pinning it on my circle skirt. Once it's all pinned on, I'm going to do my 5/8 inch seam allowance, stitch all the way around the top. Back stitching at the beginning and end. Now that the waistband is on initially, I'm going to go and iron that seam open, and then I'm going to iron that seam up so that all the seam allowance will be contained within my waistband and I will have no raw edges showing. Once it's pressed open and up, I'm going to just go ahead and press down a 1/2 inch all along the opposite edge so that when I do my stitch in the ditch, I have a nice clean edge I'm working with. I'm going to press in the 2 ends so all my seam allowances are contained. Then I'm going to go and pin where I'm going to be stitching. So I'm going to stitch right in the ditch. Instead of up on the waistband, I'm actually stitching in between the waistband and the skirt this time. And we're going to do just an edge stitching right for the end, and then we're going to slip over into that edge or into that ditch stitch. And you are actually catching the flap of the underside for this entire stitch. And up the other side, just so it's all contained. Check it out. So it's just catching just that little bit of fabric. Awesome. We are on to the skirt hook. So I'm just going to hand stitch on. My waistband probably could have used 2 skirt hooks, however I only have 1 right now. So I sew on the skirt hook, and then I measure out where the bar is going to go and whip stitch the skirt hook on. Now it's time for hemming. So I actually let my garment hang out in my closet for a couple of days just to let it all hang out. The bias will stretch, so you want to make sure, specifically on circle skirts, that you let it hang out for a couple days before you hem it, or else you're gonna hem it once and then the hem's gonna stretch again and it's gonna go uneven. So you just want to let it hang and get as even as possible.
Then I'm going to go around and mark in between my safety pins and just match them up so that I am cutting off an even amount. You actually will not be cutting off an even amount all the way around, just because when you're on the bias, it's going to have stretched a little bit more than when you are on the straight of grain. Take out those safety pins and trim away. Now, if you hemmed it exactly where you wanted it to finish, you would have to add some length. I just wanted to hem it as long as possible, so I cut off as little as possible. I'm using bias tape to create a binding on the bottom. You could create bias tape out of the fabric, but I'm just using some basic white bias tape. You are stitching in one of the folds of the bias tape all the way around, and then I'm going to iron it up. That will encase all of the raw edges and get it a nice clean look. And then once it's ironed, I'm going to go back and do one more top stitch all the way around at the exact same length from the edge so that it's a nice clean edge looking. And there we have it. Ooh, she looks so good.
And there we have it. We have now created that fun circle skirt. I am super excited to wear this to my dance class next Tuesday. It's just going to be all swishy and happy. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Also, make sure that if you want the pattern, go grab it down in my store so that you can make your own circle skirt. This circle skirt I did not add pockets to, but they are pretty easy to be adding pockets. I'll probably do another video soon about adding pockets into patterns that don't have pockets already pre-made into them. So definitely check back soon for having that video. And I hope to see you in some of my other videos. Happy sewing!